My mom hadn't spoken to her sister in 20 years. When we crashed her daughter's wedding, I discovered why family secrets should sometimes stay buried. I always knew there was a sister my mom never talked about, a phantom aunt who existed only in the edges of old photographs my grandmother kept hidden in her attic. Mom would change the subject whenever I asked, her eyes clouding with something between anger and grief. Some bridges can't be rebuilt once they're burned, was all she'd say. Then last month my cousin Ellie, a cousin I'd never met, posted her wedding invitation on social media. My mother wasn't on the guest list. I watched Mom stare at the post for a full minute before closing her laptop without a word. That night I heard her crying in the bathroom. The next morning she announced we were driving to Chicago. I need to see my sister one last time, she said, throwing clothes into a suitcase before she rewrites our entire history for her daughter's wedding. The 6-hour drive was filled with silence until somewhere in Indiana when Mom finally started talking. Her sister Catherine had been her best friend growing up in Sperble, despite being opposites. Mom was studious and careful. Catherine was wild and fearless. We promised to be each other's bridesmaids to raise our kids together, Mom said, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. Until your father came between us, I nearly swerved off the road, Dad. What did he do? It's not what he did, she said quietly. It's what we did. The story spilled out in fragments. Before my mom met my dad, he had dated Catherine briefly in college. They broke up, and 2 years later he met my mother at a mutual friend's party. They fell in love, not realizing the connection until Mom brought him home for Christmas. Catherine accused me of stealing him, but they were long over, Mom said. She made a scene at our engagement party, told everyone I'd betrayed her, then she didn't come to our wedding. But that didn't explain 20 years of silence. Here is more, Mom admitted. After you were born, Catherine showed up at our house drunk. She told me, Mom's voice cracked. She told me she'd been pregnant when they broke up, that she'd had an abortion because he convinced her it was the right thing to do. We arrived at the wedding venue, a restored historic mansion with gardens where the ceremony was already underway. Mom smoothed her dress, applied lipstick with shaking hands, and we slipped into seats at the very back. Catherine stood near the altar, mother of the bride, radiant. She looked so much like my mom, it was startling. The same eyes, the same smile lines, just with blonde hair instead of brown. She hadn't noticed us yet after the ceremony. During the reception, Mom approached Catherine by the champagne table. I hung back watching. Congratulations. Mom said simply, Ellie looks beautiful. Catherine froze glass halfway to her lips. Rebecca, you weren't invited, I know, but I couldn't let another milestone pass without trying to fix this. Catherine's husband appeared beside her, protectively placing his hand on her back. He glanced at me, then did a double take so obvious that both sisters noticed. Who's this? Catherine asked, her voice suddenly thin. My daughter Emma, Mom said, your niece. Catherine stared at me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. She looks exactly like him. Like who? I asked, stepping forward. Like your father, Catherine said, but she wasn't looking at me anymore. She was looking at her husband, whose face had drained of all color, and that's when I realized why we'd really come, not for reconciliation, not for closure, but for my mother to finally reveal the secret that had destroyed the relationship. My father, the man who raised me, who I'd buried 3 years ago after a heart attack, wasn't my biological father at all. The man standing before me, Catherine's husband of 18 years, was. You told me you lost the baby, he whispered to Catherine, and you told me you'd never contacted him again, my mother said to her sister. As the truth exploded around us, Ellie, the bride, approached Mom. What's going on? Catherine's husband, my apparent biological father, looked from me to Ellie with horror dawning on his face. The daughters who should have been cousins were actually half-sisters. Security escorted us out as Catherine screamed that we'd ruined everything. Mom was silent the entire drive to our hotel. Why now? I finally asked. Why reveal this at her daughter's wedding? Because she sent me this last week, Mom said, showing me an email on her phone. It was from Catherine, a long message about forgiveness and moving forward, but with one devastating line. It would have destroyed everything we built, she thought. Dad died never knowing about you, Mom explained. But he did know. He chose us, Emma. He chose to be your father in every way that matters, and Catherine has spent 20 years thinking she won, that her lie protected her perfect life.